Hey guys. Off to a flying start. Oh, we're jumping slides. Okay, so start with what is Pitcrew AI. So our goal is to enhance safety and efficiency of heavy vehicle fleets. Making sure everyone gets home safely is kind of the driving light of all of that. We've got a head office in Carrington, and we've got first in the world technology for automated inspection of heavy vehicles, both in a mining rigid dump truck environment and for on-highway truck inspection. In 2023, just under a year ago, we took investment from RCF Jolimont and StartMate, which is one of the Blackbird group. We've got autonomous inspection systems operating across 6 continents now, so everywhere from Colombia to Mongolia to Mozambique to Canada, all over the world, paying customers. We're rapidly growing sales over the last couple of years, and we've got about 26 employees in Newcastle and a bunch of contractors and people globally now. We've just started a business in a subsidiary in Chile actually in the last few weeks. So the founders of Pitcrew are Joe Bullock, myself, Tim Snell, and Pat Ivory. We're all engineers from Newcastle Uni. So Joe's computer engineering, I was computer engineering as well, and Pat was electrical engineering. I'll talk about myself rather than the other guys. So I'm a Newcastle guy, born and bred from Toronto growing up. Still live in Newcastle. Did a computer engineering degree many years ago, looking at the dates on that, and then an MBA. Started my early working career in RPC Technologies and Power Control Engineers, which are still, good local businesses, which really culminated in founding Industrial Monitoring and Control, IMC, in 2010, which was really the start of Pitcrew. So it's a bit of a long, windy story from there. Pitcrew AI products were actually first developed within IMC. So IMC was a consulting business specialising in, non-visible light imaging technologies. So things like thermal imaging, multispectral and hyperspectral imaging. Pitcrew AI was one of the products that started in there. The core technologies, I'll touch on IMC because it is kind of important to understand how we got to where we are. We had a small dedicated team of engineers. We were basically consultants. Cam in the room here who just walked in was actually one of our student engineers who came through many years ago. We took on large industrial scale problems using a fairly niche technology. So applications like this image you can see here is a large copper refinery, and the orange spots you can see here are the hot spots forming between cells in the copper refining process. So by being able to detect those in real time, you're able to increase the quality of your copper and decrease the energy consumption massively. So it's kind of these things that aren't visible to the naked eye that we were using out of visible technology to try and automatically detect, and these one-off bespoke applications for heavy industrial clients. Thermal imaging, so it's beyond visible light, so we're out in the 8 to 10 micron part of the 8 to 12 micron part of the spectrum for long wave infrared. Everything above absolute zero, so everything above minus 273 degrees C emits some kind of thermal energy in that part of the spectrum, and then we're using thermal cameras to visualise heat. I just wanted to touch on that because it is a key part of sort of everything we're doing in Pitcrew now. Radiometric thermography is that last point. So thermal imaging is basically applying a false colour palette to the thermal image so that you can visualise something. Radiometric thermography goes a step further where we're actually trying to back calculate real world temperatures from that incoming sensor radiation. A lot of the work we do, radiometric thermography, is really important because we're interested in actual measurements. So these are the sort of applications we were doing. So large scale early fire detection, for example. So a large panorama image here, long range bushfire detection using pan tilt cameras. Things like portable test systems. This one over on the left, when they put up wind turbines, you can wipe out bat colonies because the blade tips end up going faster than the echolocation of the bats. And so we've actually over the years sold a lot of systems for bat studies. It's a great video. It's well, it's a horrible video, but it's an interesting one of a bat getting belted out of the air by a wind turbine. This is in at Bar Beach, so this is another big-ish project we did, so detecting the whale migration. So we've got over here a baby whale jumping. So using a trained AI model to detect obviously whales are warm-blooded, so you can detect them breathing kilometres away. And why this is important is for if you're operating, if it's a wind farm or if it's offshore drilling for any reason or seafloor mapping, you will end up with mitigation zones around where you can do those works, because you can end up basically giving whales industrial deafness, so they can't navigate anymore. So it's really important to understand where whales are so that you can plan those works. So we did quite a bit of work with the AAD, the Australian Antarctic Division, and NOPSEMA in that space. Anyway, it was a long way to get here. So in about 2018, in the consulting business, we made a decision that we were going to pivot from consulting into a product business. The reasons for that were basically in consulting, your revenue is always almost linearly correlated to the number of people you have in your team. So it doesn't scale very well. And it becomes very difficult to decouple individuals from business. Customers become attached to people, which, if you're a founder looking for an exit strategy or something like that at some point in time, your business is linked to you intrinsically. So products was what we were heading into product, and we had 3 products that we were investigating spinning out at the time. So early fire detection. I'll see if this video plays. So this is a fire detection in a recycling and waste centre. So we've got this issue in recycling centres where everyone throws their AirPods in the recycling bin and front end loaders hit that, and then little lithium bombs that go into the recycling stream. So we end up with a lot of recycling fires. It's a really great application for thermal imaging cameras. We had a lot of sales with big recycling companies in that space. We were working with CSIRO at the time on some solar forecasting technology. It was Cyro's tech. We were helping them with some of the deployment and commercialization of that technology. Again, 360-degree cameras looking up at the sky, tracking clouds through the sky to forecast solar output. And we were talking to Cyro about spinning that out as a business. There's a lot of complications with that sort of setup. And I think fundamentally for us, looking at solar forecasting when you're out at 5 and 30 minutes ahead, you look at that business with a 10-year time horizon, and battery technology is improving so quickly that short-term forecasting becomes less relevant over time. So we kind of discounted that. And where we landed as the business that we actually wanted to spin out was vehicle safety inspection. So we're rolling out systems like this, checking the underside of trucks, looking at brakes for, at the time it was the Roads and Maritime Service, the RMS. We were seeing the rate of brake defects on trucks is absolutely terrifying. If you've ever got a truck behind you on the highway, be worried. It's really terrible. And I guess what we were seeing with this is we were able to detect brake issues on trucks very reliably, and we could see a real path to having a great impact in that space, and it's a repeatable, scalable technology. So we thought, this is the one. Then this happened. I got a phone call one day from the chief solicitor of ICAC. Our technology, along with a bunch of others, had been caught up in a corruption inquiry at the RMS. So it turned out, I was made aware that some reports from our system with another company's logo on the top had been resold to the RMS. So it turns out there was a bunch of people inside the RMS involved in setting up shell companies and reselling services to the RMS. Anyway, they cleared out the entire team at the RMS. So all of our contacts, all of our work, everything just disappeared. All of our IP was published online as part of this ICAC inquiry at one point. So it was a stressful, horrible period of time. And it was then, okay, what next? So there was basically no heavy vehicle inspection team there for a while. So that then changed. RMS got disbanded. They went to the Transport for New South Wales, and then the entire heavy vehicle department of Transport for New South Wales has been pushed out again, and now it's the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator. So they completely cleared out yeah, was millions of dollars. Operation Amber, it's a thing. So then the question was, where can we use this technology that we've built for a similar application? We were aware of this sort of issue, so tyre fires on big mining haul trucks. So for people that are outside of the mining industry or even outside of the tyre industry, it's not something you would be acutely aware of. So the big tyres on these trucks are 14 foot high. At the moment, they cost about $70,000 a tyre. So you'd think they'd be, indestructible, right? But particularly in the wet, if you even get a small cut into that top layer of rubber, you can end up pushing in moisture and grit. You end up with friction starting to rub between the layers of rubber. It becomes a bit of a feedback cycle where the adhesives start to break down and you get an exothermic reaction going on. And you can actually, in a worst case, you get this sort of situation, a tyre on fire and a truck on fire. It's remarkably common, a weekly event globally. Historically, the way they check for this is it'll literally be as drivers are changing at shift change. Burning rubber is a really distinct smell, and they would pick it up early enough that they could get in there and change a tyre before anything would get too catastrophic. They don't get it all the time. In a case like this had a driver on there who had to jump off. But we could see a path where, as trucks started to move to autonomous and you remove drivers from the truck, there's a potential for this issue to become worse. And that's exactly how it played out. So a mine in the Pilbara, this is an early photo taken with a handheld thermal camera, where the site was shifting to an autonomous fleet and they had a massive uptick in the rate of tyre fires. So because these tyres are a massive pressure vessel, if there's a smouldering or a smoking tyre, they basically need to isolate that truck and create a 300 metre radius exclusion zone around the vehicle because it's an explosion risk and a fatal hazard for no less than 24 hours at the time. So on this site, when they moved to autonomous, they were isolating a truck every 4 to 6 weeks. So massive downtime costs, massively disruptive. And we went up there with a thermal camera, handheld, and we said, we can do this. And so we worked with the site, bush mechanicked some very dodgy looking skids together in there by the Boilermakers on site, and got some cameras in the field and developed the first version of Pitcrew AI, which was, how do I play that video? Sorry guys.
So we see the back video.
Might work this time. All right, I don't think that's going to play. Sorry. So basically, you can't see it at all in the visible image up here. But what you would see if this video would play is this is the 2D unfolded treads of the truck coming around. So you can see the rear four tyre treads. And you'll see this repeating hotspot coming around.
Here, back now.
Ah, thank you. Yeah, so you can see this hotspot rolling around here. So that heat separation is inside the tread pack of the tyre, and it'll be, that'll be 6 foot long, but visually not visible at all. So it's kind of a perfect application for the technology. So that gave us more conviction than ever on the application as a whole. So we could see mining is really leading the way. Mining is a sandboxed environment where automation can be pushed out well before on-road. But we could see the issues that were emerging there. You remove drivers from trucks, they can't feel vibrations, they can't smell smoke, all of these things that beyond just driving the truck that were causing maintenance issues for the vehicles. And then we look at that and we think point-to-point autonomous highway haulage over the next 10 years is going to be a real thing. It's already operating in many parts of the world. And removing those drivers is going to have implications. There needs to be autonomous inspection to support those autonomous fleets. So as a long-term trend, that's where we're going. So then where the product is today. So this is what a more modern version of the skid looks like. So Starlink satellite dish, weather station, a couple of thermal cameras. Usually there's a color camera on the top as well, battery and ground isolation and stuff. It sits at the side of the haul road, scanning every vehicle as it passes. The two cameras capture the front tyres and the rear tyres as it approaches and departs. There's no changes to the site operation required, and they're able to get early detection of those sort of damages. And we're talking, there's other sensors like TPMS, tyre pressure monitoring sensors that go inside the chamber of the tyre. We're very much a complementary technology. There's too much thermal mass in a tyre of that size for the internal chamber to register what's going on in the tread. So TPMS would pick up, say, a tread heat separation like that as it was lighting on fire, basically. Whereas we're able to see that sometimes several weeks in advance. So this is what the dashboard looks like. Hopefully this one plays. Just a quick video of this. So we're picking up heat separations on the rear tyres there. Can't really see, but there's a little box flying around on that. So everything from about 1 lug in size we're able to detect. Coming back to UI, keep it really simple for users. So colour coding tyres, basically a simple traffic light system. So something like this is flagged as a high level alert because of they call it a tyre injury, so a differential temp. So it's basically saying that the hot spot of that little hot part of the injury relative to the rest of the tyre, there's a big enough differential that that's deemed a high risk. And so what does this do for the mining industry? So the big one is improved safety. So we're removing people from harm's way. There's less human vehicle interactions. We're not letting a high risk situation get into the workshop where people can be exposed to that. We are getting an enhancement to production, so we're stopping those isolation events from occurring. We're also able to keep trucks up for longer because we're able to be a bit smarter about our work planning, so batching work orders and things like that. There's an increase in efficiency because we're able to plan inventory better. We know what damages occurred. We can be planning back routes for trucks to be repairing tyres and things like that. And then there's the environmental benefits. So each of those tyres, the life cycle of that tyre is about 30 tonnes of carbon. So for every tyre that we can repair rather than replace, there's a massive carbon saving there. Then the on-road system, so where's that up to at the moment? So the on-road highway inspection system is, we're working with the NHVR here in New South Wales at the heavy vehicle inspection stations. We're working with private fleet operators of road trains, even as far away as Mongolia for this sort of system. So it's an in-ground enclosure that goes in the road and checks the underside of the vehicles, and then a camera on either side of the vehicle, along with some other sensors like number plate recognition, axle counting. We check brakes, wheel hubs, bearings, tyre surface temperatures. The big one for private fleet operators is that we're avoiding those unplanned downtime events. So if you're sending a vehicle out for 6 hours, you don't want a roadside breakdown. And then hopefully this one plays again. So here we've got vehicles coming in, tagged by their number plate. The risk level is highlighted here. A colour image snapshot, and we've got some mechanism around speed. This one, vehicle centre, is just like an error checking because trucks cut the corner. Yep, and this video plays.
What's the vehicle centre?
Sometimes the truckies cut the corner, so it means you can't see both brakes. So it's just a bit of an error check on there. So you can see here, this is a road train, so a 92-wheel road train, quad trailer, and we've got an issue on this third trailer here. So we've got one brake sitting very hot as it's coming through. So that could be a caliper that's locked on. Often with brakes it would be a cold brake that's a non-functioning brake. So we're looking for differentials either longitudinally or across the vehicle. So here we can come in, we can have a look at we can generate work orders straight from here. This is the live video of the 3 scans coming through. We can see here is where it's marked that we've got the issue on the vehicle. Yeah, so the hot tyre coming through. Okay. And so how does this actually generate value in industry? So again, the big one is safety. So particularly as we move, at the moment, 99% of these trucks are manned trucks on road. But within a decade, in my opinion, a big percentage of that is going to be autonomous vehicles. And I think in reality for society to accept autonomous trucks on our roads, they're going to have to be an order of magnitude safer than manned trucks before people are willing to accept it. And a big part of that is going to be staying on top of maintenance issues and that whole chain of responsibility piece for the truck owners. So for us, safety is again the number one. Being able to proactively manage maintenance. So some of those scans like you just saw, we would scan vehicles as they come into a depot, and it means someone will get the SM, or we've got an app now, someone would get a notification on their app. It would say this trailer, this axle, this side, and they would be able to go and have a look and make those maintenance changes, change out a brake caliper before that vehicle goes out again. We're automating reporting around compliance, so things like underinflation of tyres or brake issues, those sort of things. And again, the environmental aspect, so extending component life is a big deal. So back to the business side of things. Our strategy as a business is kind of in 4 phases. The OTR, off-the-road tyre inspection for the big mining haul trucks is where there is a real high-value business need today that we're able to make sales. So we're focusing very much on that almost embarrassingly niche application right now, trying to get a global footprint, get as many systems as we can out globally. For us, we're aiming for 300 systems over the next few years. From there, we'll be collecting a lot of data from all of these systems, and we'll have a brand and a footprint out there, and we'll be able to start doing mechanical inspections of vehicles. So you can see here, we've got an asymmetry on the rear struts of this vehicle, so that could be a valving issue, it could be a hydraulic issue. Up here, we've got an issue with the final drive unit on this vehicle, or the brake pack. So we're starting to build a data set of all these sort of defects that we can detect in the vehicles. And for phase 2, we'll be able to turn on those sort of detections for the maintenance bays of these sites as a very low net marginal cost revenue stream that will add a lot of value for the clients. The next phase is to roll out into the higher volume, lower value sectors. So for us, that's really that on-road space. So where we operate with the on-road trucks at the moment is really that top echelon of operators, the top 1 or 2% that are really proactive with technology. We're proving out the technology, we're working with the regulators, we're working with that top 1 or 2%, but the value proposition is just not there in road trucking yet. But the 2 biggest input costs to road trucking right now are labour and diesel. And if we look at that with sort of 10 years, we're moving to alternative fuels or electrification, and we're automating away the driver. So the cost base of road freight is going to shift fundamentally over the next decade, and we want to be in the box seat ready to ride that wave as it arrives. And then the final phase is basically all automated transport. We want to be there as the autonomous inspection to support that transition to an autonomous future. So what are the learnings so far? First thing I'll say is we're still at the very beginning of this journey, so I'm far from an expert. I'm still humbled every day by this stuff. Transitioning from consulting to product is really, really hard. For me, from a personality standpoint, saying no to customers is not in a consultant's vocabulary. You usually say, yeah, no problem, I'll come back to you with a price. And I think the first thing about product is being able to say, no, we're not doing that right now. And being unashamed in focusing on that really narrow niche application and doing it really well. Very different to consulting. So that was a hard transition for me personally, and probably a lot for a lot of the core team. Probably also I really underestimated how much there was to product other than just the technology. Now, I'm not saying the technology is easy, but there's a whole lot of stuff that makes a product that is totally unrelated to technology. How do you support? How do you deliver? What do the logistics look like? What are the, all of that softer stuff, which the engineer in me kind of thought, oh yeah, that'll be easy, is the hard bit. For me, it felt like 80% of the work. The right investors are really important, but the right champion customers are way more important. So we've got fantastic investors. I can't say a bad thing about StartMate or RCF Jolimont. They've both been brilliant. I mean, we were just talking about Michael Batco, who was here last week. Fantastic people, fantastic to have behind us. But none of that matters if you don't have champion customers. Start with customers, and investors will follow. I feel like in the startup community, there's this real thing about, oh, we've got to find investment. Forget that, find customers, and the investor bit will be easy. Really, everyone always says this, and I was like, yeah. But really, the more you can clarify that end goal of what do you want this to look like in 10 years, the better. Because it gives you, the more you can articulate that goal and really distill it down to something that's really clear and concise, the more it gives the entire team a lens to make all decisions through. So the less you need to be involved in those decisions, because the decision is really obvious because they know exactly what that end goal is and they've got that lens to make that call. And for me, that's probably something I kicked that can down the road far too long. It probably was that consulting mindset of we do a bit of everything. It was, no, this is the thing we are doing. And it really then speeds up everything from that point forward. Which flows onto this last one, is you'll never have all the information. But the rate you're making those decisions and moving forward is more important than the accuracy of those decisions. There's very few decisions that you can't undo. So just make the call, get on with it, and if it's wrong, fix it. And similarly, give your young guys the power to make those decisions. Students, whatever you've got working for you, tell them to come into you saying, I intend to do this, rather than can I do this? And seek forgiveness, not permission type stuff. It just speeds up the whole operation. Thank you.
I'll jump to the screen and we can do some questions. Oh, awesome. Before we get into a audience Q&A, I do have some questions from people who registered on Eventbrite who just had specific things to ask. So we'll go through those and then we'll track to the audience. So maybe the question will be answered. That's awesome.
Thanks.
I have a question and a statement to start off with. My statement was, I really loved the fact that you gave such illustrative descriptions, like being able to see the videos. That was so good, because this is a topic that I know nothing about, and now I feel like I'm an expert. So thank you so much for doing that. I'll move over as well, so you can be centered. Everyone's on this side. And my question was, and I'm really sorry if this is a silly question, but you were talking about how, obviously, when the trucks get back from going to the depot, that you obviously analyse them, they get a notification to their phone to say, hey, like this particular trailer has an issue. Is there a step after that where like they genuinely can't get back on the road after that? Or is it just kind of up to you hope that they do the right thing? Yeah,
so it depends on the customer. So in a compliance setting with the NHVR, for example, they use our tool as a pre-screening tool before they will put a truck on a calibrated brake force roller tester machine, and then they use that for the compliance action. So the way that would work historically is it's almost like a random breath test. They would just randomly put trucks onto the brake force roller tester, and they might be able to get 10 trucks through a day, something like that, and they might defect one. Whereas now they'll get 10 trucks through a day, but they'll be defecting 10 trucks because every truck that they put on there has a brake issue. Again, it's terrifying how many trucks have brake issues. In a private fleet environment, so we've got operations where, say, it's an underground mining environment where they're running road trains underground, and for that it's really high risk around, they want to manage risk around brake fires and things like that, because if you have a fire in an underground environment, it's a major safety hazard. But for the guys running the road trains, like in the video, they would be taking proactive preventive actions before trucks go on the road. So again, we're working with that top echelon of operators, and these guys are very good operators who are very concerned about duty of care and chain of responsibility and those sort of things. And things like that with a brake issue or a hot hub, you can end up with wheel-off events and wheels going at oncoming traffic, and there's been deaths and things like that. So they're very proactive for that. But again, our ability to impact change ends at that notification effectively, yeah.
Yeah, great, thank you. So our first question is from Peter. He says, when and what started your interest in AI?
It was more an interest in computer vision, and AI became a useful tool to achieve computer vision outcomes. It wasn't for a long time, so the tooling wasn't there, the GPUs weren't what they are today. The infrastructure just wasn't there. So we've come from a traditional computer vision background, but AI has definitely become the tool that lets you achieve more with less, and is much more adaptable. So I guess we kind of grew into AI as the most effective tool for what we were doing anyway.
Yeah. I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, but when I first met Tim on a call when we decided to do Startup Stories, Tim said something that I thought was really valuable for a lot of founders who are starting out, and I hope you don't mind if I mention this. You can edit it out.
I don't know what it is.
But I basically asked Tim, you know, what made you so passionate about this particular problem? And you said, it's not that I was actually that passionate about it, it was just that I saw a problem and I wanted to solve it. And I thought that was a really interesting take, because I think a lot of the time we talk to founders who, and I love that they are very passionate about a particular topic or a particular problem, and that's why they solve it. And they continue solving it, but I love the idea that you just saw a problem and you wanted to be a problem solver, and therefore that's what you did.
Yeah, well, and I guess that comes from the consulting thing. We were exposed to all of these problems, and I definitely wouldn't say that I'm not passionate about it. I mean, everything we were doing, you know, with the whales and everything like that was, I think at our core, you know, we're engineers, but we're probably greenies. Even though we work in mining, we're probably greenies at heart. You know, we want to see environmental outcomes, we want to see safety outcomes, we want to see all of that sort of stuff. And so all of those systems we were working in over the years sort of met those goals. And this is one area where we can have a real impact, and we know we can. And it's kind of, okay, at some point you've got to push your chips across the table and say, we're going all in on this one. And that's where we got to.
Yeah, I love it. David asked, can you share a specific case where Pitcrew AI's technology prevented what could have been a serious safety incident?
Yeah, there's actually plenty. So, I mean, in the mining industry, I think we just did a case study from the oil sands region in Canada. So one of our big partners there, Caltire, I think there was 36 tyre fires we've prevented in the last month on a single site. Wow. So the oil sands is like Mars. It is another planet, and the way they push the trucks is unlike anywhere else in the world. And it was, each of those tyre fires has the risk. I mean, tyres are deemed a critical safety hazard on mine sites because they do explode. They do, you know, they have killed multiple people. So yeah, absolutely. Some of those events would have made it into the workshop and could have been real safety hazards, and we'll ping those up in advance. And similarly in the on-road space, I mean, literally every day we're picking up major brake issues on trucks, which are, you know, brakes are the number one contributing factor for heavy vehicle incidents on the road.
Yeah, that's so good that you have, I guess, like a backlog of really successful stories in your head that other people wouldn't know about because they don't see the data that you have.
Yeah, again, it's terrifying what's on the road.
Yeah. Shannon has asked, going from idea to MVP, how did you overcome the hurdles?
Idea to MVP. I guess we were a bit different from a startup in the sense we didn't just have this, you know, abstract idea that we needed to get out there and test. We did the consultant thing where we said we can solve this for you, and came up with a number and just made sure that we hung on to the IP in the way we structured that deal. A lot of hard graft, is that okay to say? Like, I don't know, we just kind of banged our head against the wall until it worked, I guess.
Did it?
Yeah.
I love it. I think that's perfectly okay to say, because sometimes that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
Fazan has said, what are your key predictive indicators your ML systems use to forecast vehicle maintained needs? I hope you know.
So I guess the time series forecasting and the predictive aspect is probably one of the least developed parts of our system. It's definitely one of the things we're building out over time, but it's something that it's one of the most infant parts of our product. So we're very good at detecting issues, but the time series forecasting bit is not where it needs to be. And a big part of that is just environmental variables. So these things are operating in the real world in very diverse, I mean, the Canadian oil sands, we had a day last year where we had systems at minus 52 degrees C in the oil sands and plus 50 in the Pilbara. So we're in like the most diverse operating conditions you can imagine. We can't control things like truck speed, and we can't control, and there's not enough telemetry and sensing on those vehicles to get a full picture to be able to accurately time series forecast at this point in time. I guess the answer is we're not that good at it yet, but as we're able to collate more data sources and there's more telemetry and more pieces of data available from these vehicles, we'll be able to improve that over time. And right now we're just hoarding that data ready to go.
Yep. Great, that was a great answer. Savannah has said, looking ahead, what developments in computer vision technology excite you most for the future of autonomous inspection?
I just think the rate of change in AI models is incredible. Like particularly the inference around video, I think is one of those areas of development at the moment that is just incredible. And I think for us it'll allow more heuristic interpretation of images rather than, I think it's going to be a big change over the next couple of years.
Yeah, great. Thank you. We have 2 questions left and then we'll hand over to the audience. So the first question says, navigating the startup pathway, what would you like to tell your earlier self now that you have the experience on your side?
Yeah, the startup pathway. Geez, if I could go back to 2010, Tim, with IMC, I'd have a few things to say. The right team is the most critical part of the whole thing. I mean, the business model, everything about the product is going to change, but making sure you've got the right people with you is number one. And that's both incentivised correctly in terms of having a clean cap table and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Don't give away too much equity. That's the number one. And just having the right team incentivised correctly is all it's about.
Yeah, I really loved your learnings slide that you had up there, and I really liked particularly the point that you said that like the investors are great, but the customers are what really matter.
Yep.
Because I think there is sometimes that mindset of I'll find the investor and then I'll find the customers, but it's like the customers are so important, so I love that point.
That was probably my one thing coming from, we had customers before we had investors, right? So coming back into it and you get into the startup scene and everyone's just talking about, oh, what have you raised? And it's like, who's paid you for your product? Like that's the thing that actually matters. You know, the getting investment is a means to an end. Like it's a necessary thing that you need to do in order to scale, but the customers are what matter. Someone actually wanting what you're making is what matters.
Yeah, I really love that. And the last question that we have here is from Simon. He said, what's the most unconventional decision you made in building Pitcrew AI that ended up being crucial to your success?
Unconventional decision. I don't actually know on that one. I haven't got a good answer for that. All decisions seem conventional to me because I made them, I guess.
Yeah. That's a great answer. Yes. Before we start the Q&A, I do have a feedback sheet, so I'll just grab this. If we could all just grab out our phones to scan this QR code, just let us know what you like about these events, what you really enjoyed about Tim's talk, so that he knows to keep saying that moving forward. That'd be great. And then once you've done that, it's only 3 questions. It should only take you 30 seconds. Then we'll take a couple of questions. Boris?
I've got a business question and a technical question. I couldn't agree more with your take on going from consultancy to product. I tried it myself with a former business and it's
hard.
Freaking hard.
Yeah.
And we didn't have the discipline that you had to finally say no. But when you said no, did you have investors at that point?
Yeah, so the messiness, we'll probably cut these bits off the video. The messiness that we're in now, like I guess we had locked, within IMC, we'd locked in some of those long-term customers. Yeah. You know, we've got vendor numbers with BHP or Rio Tinto or whoever with IMC. So we had Pitcrew sales going through IMC and we had IP locked up in there because of R&D tax claims and all this sort of guff. That we ended up having to roll IMC up into a holding company, Pitcrew Holding, and then starting Pitcrew Trading Entity, which can start to build up over time. But the investors came in at this holding company level, so they own the consulting business. And then we're still in this situation where we'll have support tickets coming in for consulting stuff. It's still going as so I guess from a strategy standpoint, IMC is the national distributor for FLIR thermal automation cameras, which is a key input cost for Pitcrew. Yeah. So maintaining that distribution agreement is strategically important. So IMC now is a pure distribution company and we're just doing FLIR camera sales and we've got one BDM that runs around selling cameras. And we're just dealing with legacy support tickets coming in that are still a bit of a distraction for the engineers over here in Pitcrew now. But yeah, we're doing our best to sort of outsource to local guys like Safi to try and do some of our consulting work for us and whatnot.
And the technical one is your whale detection.
Yep.
Is that just a warm body activity detection, or do you have actual signature detection?
No, so we
change detection.
Yeah, so we trained on different whale species and dolphins and all sorts of stuff.
So you'll ignore noise?
Yeah, I mean, it's far from perfect because we didn't get it, like it was still, honestly, a research tool. It's being used by the AAD, so, and we did some trials with Nopsema. There's actually commercial interest in it today. I'm trying to find someone who wants to buy a gazillion images of whales to go and train their own AI and build that system if anyone's up for it. But yeah, so we would still get you still get false positives occasionally, but it was pretty good by the end.
Strength is in the thermal cueing. Is that what it is?
Yeah. So the whale blow, we were spotting out to sort of 7 kilometres, I think, pretty reliably, and the blow is actually really nicely detectable. It's really in close range where you would get more false alarms with seals or dolphins or whales from disturbances in the water, but out at long range, whale detection was actually pretty good, which is.
I'm just asking from a point of view of supplementing my own technology.
Yeah.
Risky detection.
Great. Yes.
I was going to ask about, getting those first customers, and I think you might have started to talk about it, but I was doing my survey. I'm really interested in what your model was, your market entry model, like straight to miners, or where did you go, being traditionally very hard to get in there?
Yeah, so we did have the leg up because we had the consulting business there, so we had established relationships and vendor numbers and some of those things that make it easier to get into some of those miners. But I mean, we registered Pitcrew domain like 8th of February 2020 and the border shut a week later. It was like literally the worst time to launch a global mining technology business when you need to go to mines globally. And we made sales into Canada in that first year during COVID lockdowns. I made it to Canada before I made it to Perth. Those first sales were, honestly, it was just me posting shit on LinkedIn. And it obviously struck a chord with the industry because it started getting reshared. Again, it's a very niche, very specific application that to 99.999% of people on LinkedIn, they'll scroll past and go like, oh yeah, it's a tyre. But for people in the industry, they'll be like, my truck was on fire last week, I need that. And so we were getting inquiries from Kazakhstan and Canada and Colombia and, using Google Translate to translate Spanish emails every morning, sort of thing. It was that was it. So I mean, that to me was like, okay, we're on the right thing here because the organic inquiries are high.
That's awesome.
Congratulations.
Yes.
I had a bit of a follow-up question with the teams about the international side of it.
Yep.
And how you're going on that. I think last time we talked, we were talking about South America.
Yep.
How did that end up going?
Pretty well, yeah. So we've got more systems internationally than we do in Oz now by probably 2 to 1 at least, which is cool. We've got, unfortunately, there's no the engineering here wants like a nice, neat global strategy of this is how we're doing it. And it just doesn't work like that. So we've set up a subsidiary in Santiago. Free trade agreement with Chile makes it a really nice entry point to the rest of Latin America for sales into, say, at the moment we're going into Peru and Brazil from there. Argentina's on the roadmap, but not really happening yet. We've got systems, then we've got a really good partner in Canada, Caltire. They've got a global footprint, so then we've got systems with them in Mexico, Colombia, Mozambique, a few other weird places. So they've been a fantastic partner. Honestly, for us at the moment, I feel like we're still fumbling our way through that strategy and what that looks like. So the thing that will drive enterprise value of the business, and that's what we're all here for, right? For us is the SaaS recurring revenue, the software. But getting the hardware right is totally critical to our product actually working. So it's how do we, and it's the hardest bit to scale is the hardware. So for us, it's okay, how do we really incentivize local agents to be doing a really good job at supporting our hardware in country, and then leave the software to us so that we can scale the software as quickly as possible. And we're still trying to figure out the balance of, okay, what works? Is it a reseller? Is it a distributor? Is it a nominated service agent in each of these regions? How does that play into, I was on the phone earlier this morning figuring out tax withholding obligations out of Peru. Like it's a shit show. And we're just fumbling our way through, if I'm honest.
Supplementary question to that. Where does that put you? Are you working on the business or are you working in the business?
Both. More on the business than I used to be, but definitely still in the weeds. We've got 2 senior hires coming on early in January, on the 6th and the 13th. We've got a guy coming in to lead manufacturing strategy from a global manufacturing background, and we've got a CFO coming in. And those 2 roles are hopefully going to free up a lot of my grunt work, so that I can do more of the strategic on the business stuff. Yeah, we've been hiring for those roles for 7 months, being very critical in who we bring into the business still.
That was actually going to be my next question, was how big is your team?
So we've got a 26-person headcount in Newcastle. We've got a guy in Santiago now, a guy in New Zealand, a guy in Perth, a guy in Melbourne. So a few guys globally now, but yeah, about 30-ish. And then we've got a bunch of consultants and contractors, like we've got contract sparkies that come in to help us build the systems here in Newcastle and whatnot. There's probably about 40 people involved in different ways with the business, I guess.
And when would you say the inception of Pitcrew AI was? Like, would you say 2020 then?
Yeah, 2020. Yeah, Feb 2020 is when we said, okay, this is it. We registered the domain. We
scaled fast in 4 years. It's a lot of team.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we transplanted all the engineers over from IMC into Pitcrew, so that was obviously a good leg up. And we had a fantastic core team.
Yeah, great. Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, heaps. This is my favourite startup stories, and I've been to everyone this whole year. What I really want to ask about is the competitiveness, especially when you started out. So if you were doing Caltire, was that your first sort of customer? Then how were you not worried that they were just going to sort of adopt a solution on their own, and then they'll take this hardware and be able to sell it themselves?
At some point, you've got to have your back that you know what you're doing. And I guess you can kind of say, oh, it's easy to just throw a bunch of data in an AI model and away you go. And that's in many ways the case. Like if you just want to go and, if you wanted to train AI to detect people crossing the road or something like that, you could have that done in an afternoon these days. Whereas I think where we had got to with the radiometric thermography piece is, we're not reinventing TensorFlow, but we're certainly changing the plumbing around that so that we can train our models on radiometric, 14-bit unsigned data rather than 8-bit, compressed PNGs, for example, which gives us, both better sensitivity in the model, but it also enables us to come back after the fact and interrogate every pixel of every frame of every video for a real-world temperature. So it's kind of this unique bit of core infrastructure that we built up over a long time. So we knew we had some kind of competitive moat there. We also had, 2 years worth of data out of the Pilbara at that point, so we had a bit of a leg up in terms of a data set. And honestly, you've just got to take a leap of faith at some point. I will say that we worked with another global large tyre customer that we've, would have been a flagship, feather in the hat type customer that we've completely pulled back on because of fears of IP leakage. So it is a real concern when you're dealing with these big guys, and you just need to be strategic in how you manage that, because there's only so much you can do legally. If you're having to write a contract in French law, for example, probably tipping my hand a bit on who we're dealing with there, but you're not going to win that court case, no matter what that looks like, right? So you just need to be, well, for us, who knows? Maybe I've screwed it up. Maybe I've made the wrong decision. But yeah, you've just got to leap of faith and trust your gut sometimes.
We have time for one more question. Does anyone else have a question other than Nick? Just to make sure everyone gets one question.
Yeah, so you touched on your decision-making process, but how do you actually maintain that high level of transparency across the team and ensure that people aren't going rogue or making decisions without keeping everybody informed as things are moving so quickly?
Yeah, look, it's one of those things. You can always be better at this stuff. I think we had this hacked together like internal wiki at one point that sucked at that, and I think swapping to something like Confluence or Notable or one of those things and just forcing everyone to use it is a good first step. For decisions, we've got better at like using frameworks like a DAISY or something like that for, so at least you've got documentation around like what was the thinking when we made this stupid decision. You could always be better. I think the big one at the moment is like every time I hear anyone ask anyone a question in the office, I'm like, write that in a Confluence article so it never gets asked again. Like it's kind of, getting stuff out of people's brains and onto the page, kind of shifting to that right first culture. And we're not there, but like, I think, yeah, it's a journey, right? We'll get there one day. We literally hired a guy a couple of weeks ago who's coming to take a bunch of the hardware decision making in it. And he said, oh, what's my goal for the next 3 months? And I said, if no questions make it to Pat about this stuff in 3 months' time, that's a win, right? Like, yeah, get it all into Confluence.
We probably have one more Nick, if you'd like to ask.
Yeah, sure thing. The other question I had was about, you guys are my experts in the heat calculation side, so that
radiometric thermography, yeah.
Yeah. And so all the other applications that you had, I want to understand with your step 4, you dived into the niche of the tyres and vehicle maintenance. You step 4 on your 40 goal plan.
Yep.
It wasn't, like I said, what do you envisage doing beyond just these tyre checks, the maintenance for that? So what else do you think you can do with automating how vehicles will maintain?
Yeah, so I guess leveraging, if we can get 300 systems for tyres, seems like is a very realistic, serviceable, obtainable market. You know, we're not out in Russia where, you know, this is real world customers in real world, you know, first world mines. And that will give us a pretty hefty deployment base of hardware that then you can go and stack software layers on top of for effectively zero net marginal cost, right? Which is the dream. You know, if you can be at 98% gross margin, that's where you want to be. And there's definitely stuff that we're picking up already around, like, you know, final drive units or struts or radiator blockages or fluid levels or even like oil spills. You know, your reservoirs of oil are big, so you won't necessarily get an alarm even when you've got oil leaks. So we pick up oil leaks, I wouldn't say regularly, but we've had 4 or 5 in the last 6 months, right?
So how do you do that?
Literally at the moment we've got a team in Colombia via Caltire that do a bit of human in the loop monitoring for the Caltire stuff. So they do all the work order management planning for Caltire sites. So for us, that's part of that agreement is they then help us retrain our model. So we've got them manually tagging stuff like that for us. Yeah, so human in the loop at this point for some of those outlier type detections. But over time, it'll be, you know, there'll be simple models to train over time. You know, even once we've got a few cases, we can look at, you know, synthetic data generation or whatever we need to build up that data set. In the heavy vehicle on-road space, there's yeah, again, we'll probably cut this bit out, but talking to like the Auroras of the world, so they're a big autonomous road truck operator in the States, and they've brought up land at highway on and off ramps. So they're going to, like, your Amazon drivers will bring trailers into the depot and they'll have autonomous point to point, right? And so they were spun out of Uber's self-driving division years ago, massive VC and private equity play, really, really incredible tech. For them though, they don't want to take internally that responsibility around their vehicle checks. They want an independent authority to be checking vehicles, right? And at the moment, it's a 300-point check that you're meant to do on heavy vehicles before they go on a highway. That's not every time it goes on the road, but it's, you know, periodically. And assessing that kind of list of component inspections, there's probably 180 of those 300 checks that you can do in a non-contact visual or thermal manner. So for us, if we're going to be in a situation where we're doing, you know, 150 plus inspections on that vehicle, there's huge value in that for doing every vehicle that's going on the road. So that's where I see that on-road piece going. He's heading down to be as much of replacing the human daily inspection bay as possible for all heavy vehicles. And then that step 4 is literally everything is going to go autonomous. We're going to have autonomous taxi robo fleets. We're going to have all that sort of stuff. And that, the rental car space at the moment, there's a few players in that are doing vehicle inspections for cars, but no one's really focused. I mean, we have really carved out that niche around thermography, and again, it's that doubling down on what you know and what you're good at. No one's really doing that stuff yet, and it is such an important, for me, it's such an important part of any mechanical inspection. You know, anything mechanical going wrong is either going to get too cold or too hot, right? So thermal is a really nice piece of that puzzle. So even if we become a synergistic play with some of these existing guys in that, you know, the taxi, robo-taxi market or something like that, you know, long term, that's where we'd like to end up. But who knows, you know, the next 10 years is going to be wild. Like, it's just changing so fast.
Yeah. That was a great point to end on. So thank you so much. We give a huge round of applause.